Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the National Parents Union presents Speak Your Truth with yours truly, Vivett Dukes. I hope everyone is doing well this evening. We're not going to waste any time getting into our conversation tonight because as we are in this time of reimagining schools, reimagining what reopening schools will be, um, it has come to my attention through multiple conversations with parents, educators, and all stakeholders in our communities, our families, and in the lives of our children, that especially in the lives of our Black children, that somehow their lives are not being taken into consideration in the full context, in the full gamut of what it means to be in school as a Black and brown student. The ills and harms that they faced prior to the coronavirus pandemic are still very much there. And I, for one, am concerned that we're not hearing enough about the fact that their lives matter. And so tonight, without further ado, I'd like to bring on our first guest, who is no stranger to Speak Your Truth. Meredith, would you please join us, please? Hello.
Can you hear me? I was unmuted for a while. Hi, all.
I can hear you. Hello, dear. How are you?
Feeling good. Monday, it's hot, but
Yes.
it's summer.
So
So,
it's supposed to be.
right? It's summer break, so I could be at work. So, I'm doing well.
Yes, yes. Thank you for being here. I know that your time is limited tonight because you are, as your
Right.
name says, an edu activist. So you are on the go. Yeah.
Yep.
Tell us about this shirt first. I can't skip over that.
Oh,
So cool.
for sure. What has COVID done for us? COVID has been so scary, but yet inspiring in all these different aspects. And I feel that educators are now the most popular people in the country. We have all the attention. Everyone's looking to us to help solve these problems, and we are getting the most shine that we have ever gotten before. So now we're using that platform to say we like to be safe as the experts on what our students need. And particularly with Black Lives Matter increased awareness, we are now part of activism. So we've always been doing it, but being home, quarantined, and having social media and the news has really given us a platform.
Absolutely. If anyone is interested, because I'm interested in getting a shirt,
Okay, I'll send you one.
this is the co-founder of the organization Classroom Culture.
Yes.
Classroom Culture. Could you tell us a little bit about Classroom Culture, please?
Classroom Culture is a platform for more discussion and conversations between professionals in education, not your classroom teachers only, but your counselors, your leaders, your coaches, whoever works within those walls with the students. And we were having in person panels and roundtables for years. And of course, when COVID hit, we couldn't do it anymore. And we decided to transition to online, which has given us an even bigger platform to reach more folks. We've heard from teachers in Detroit who have similar issues, but a very different niche as a predominantly all Black school district with Black leaders and Black students, very unheard of in places like Long Island or school districts in California that have Black leadership and trickle through the entire building. We've had teachers from Seattle, and we're finding that no matter where we are, the issues remain the same. But now all of these educators are coming together in the same room, whereas before we could only reach them regionally. So I'm in DC, I had DC teachers. We did some things in New York where I'm from, New York City teachers. But now thanks to Zoom, it's unstoppable. There's no limit to who we can pull in to have these conversations.
Absolutely. So we invite you to visit if you are a classroom teacher, if you are a part of the dialogue of this reimagination of the reopening of our schools. Classroomculture.org is a platform where you can go to learn more about not only the shirt Meredith is wearing, but the work that her organization has done for the past, how long have you been around?
4 years.
4 years.
And as I said, quarantine has had some really weird ways of inspiring us all. So we're moving, we're taking advantage of it, and we're hoping people feel just as empowered.
Yes. So I know that your time with us tonight is limited as you have another engagement to attend, but I wanted to talk for you to talk to our viewers tonight about that intersection of reimagining and reopening schools and Black Lives Matter and the lives of our Black students who had their own set of challenges in school environments pre COVID-19.
Yes.
And I'm concerned that I'm not hearing enough about that intersection. It's as if somehow we think that all the conversation needs to be about is COVID-19. And while, yes, that is the glaring health concern very much at the forefront of our minds and in our faces, the issues that our Black students dealt with are still ever present.
Right.
So talk to us a little bit about that intersection and some of the things that you are aware of and can speak to.
When I think about the tragic murders that have brought on more awareness over the last 5 months, with starting with Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and the protests and marches amidst living through COVID, what it did was shed a light not only on police brutality, but multiple aspects of what being Black in America means to us. So there's pride and there's tradition, but there's also trauma and systematic racism. And when we think about it in terms of our communities and our livelihood and what we would like to enjoy with this melanin, we tend to forget that all of this racism is in every fabric of our lives. And as educators, when we see that Black men make up 2% of educators, Black women are not a large number because it's an overall female-dominated profession, we're finally paying attention to all Black Lives Matter, which include our students. So when I'm a Black educator and the only Black 8th grade teacher at a school I formerly taught with, my connection with my Black students was stronger. I was seen as someone they can trust and relate to, and I did a lot more for them than I think any other teacher would think was necessary because of that. But now, shedding light on Black Lives Matter, folks are finally realizing that things are not fair and things aren't safe. And our students, regardless of the adults, how we're all navigating being Black, we're adults. But now we can acknowledge, what are we doing to protect and to provide a foundation for those Black students in our schools? And so now we're hearing more from the students. They're seeing the protests, they're vocal, they've always had ideas. No one listened, maybe they thought it was a race card, or they heard them, but it wasn't in the context of, as much as we were saturated with slogans and social media postings, people finally seemed to have the aha moment, like, oh, this is an issue. And we wanted to take advantage of having their attention before there's another hashtag or it dies down due to COVID vaccine or the election. We want to just grab folks right now. And in grabbing them, I have to remember we need the student voices. So students across the country, thanks to social media, they're so savvy and smart. They are spreading their awareness through accounts. And their accounts are linked to describing what it means to be Black in their schools, which has never been done before, not until this last 3 months of activism. And now everyone can read these public pages, their parents, their teachers, their leadership, their classmates who may not have been aware. And it's starting to stir another movement with students and causing administrators and teachers and parents to realize, we know we gave our kids the talk. We know that they have it a little bit harder, but we had no idea that it was even happening on this level. So when the discussion starts and we're reading it and we're forwarding and we're screenshotting and we're really upset about how heavy it is, there now needs to be a plan on how to address it. So that's where we are. So now that the children have spoken, what do we do to help them feel safer? How do we acknowledge this activism? Them speaking and typing and posting is activism. And how do we bring entire student bodies together, not just our Black students and faculty, to really work towards that change? And it's not fast, it's not easy, but these conversations have started. And I like that they started and they're making people uncomfortable and calling on them to truly do something. That's where we are. We're at the what's next point.
And the children are driving it. The children are not accepting the status quo.
They're not. And usually it always starts with the students, right? They are passionate, they know how to use the internet, they have their voices heard, they have their own support groups, their own cliques. They know more than we probably know.
Yes.
They are the pulse of the school. They know a lot. And now they're speaking. And I'm afraid that if this did not happen this last few months with the police brutality and the activism, they probably never would have shared it on this level. We'd all still be in the dark. They'd move on through life, and another set of students would come forward and go through the same thing. So it can actually be that stepping stone to stop that pattern. So when we talk about even the civil rights movement, we go, wow, what if those folks weren't as brave? What would my existence and experience be like today? So what if those students weren't as brave summer 2020 to say what's happening in our hallways? Now here we are, summer 25, and there's a whole new level of class requirements to graduate that spreads more diversity and understanding. So it's a chain reaction. We're excited, we're nervous, but the spotlight's on folks. They can't shy away from it.
In the words of the departed Sam Cooke, it's been a long time coming.
It's a long time. It's here. We've been telling folks. They're listening now, and we have to grab them.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the work that you're doing, Meredith. I thank you for joining us tonight. I know you have a hard stop and a pressing deadline, so I thank you for your time here, for being an advocate for our students, for being providing a safe haven for all students, and particularly for our Black students in spaces where they're there to be educated, but simultaneously they are being traumatized. And so,
They are. And sometimes they don't even let us know about it, right? So that's the heartbreaking that they're children dealing with it on their own.
Because they've learned in their own ways. We've sent them signals and messages that some things are okay to talk about, but some are not. And so you mind yourself about what you say and where you say it and how you say it, and if you even utter it.
Absolutely.
And
it's for folks to speak up, take a risk, stand for them.
And this happens across the United States. I've been following several accounts of students who are just reaching out, several schools, more than a handful of students, some just who have waited till they graduated because they were unsure.
I understand that.
Speaking out would hinder their graduation. There are students, some are still there and saying enough is enough. I can't deal with this anymore. And so in our reimagination of how we reopen schools, I admonish all of us who are part of that conversation, which every parent, whether you have a child in the school or not, you pay taxes, you live in that neighborhood, you see all our children start listening.
Yes.
Speaking, the children.
They are.
Sure. So thank you. We'll invite you back again.
Please. I'm sorry I had to leave early, but there's more work to do.
Go for it. Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye-bye. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks, love. And so as Meredith leaves and we invite our new guest, I would like to our second guest rather, I'd like to just take a pause and really have us reflect on what Meredith shared with us. The fact that our children are in school environments where they're there to learn, to engage with each other, to grow and develop into mature adults, to grow and develop into positive contributing members of society, to grow and develop into who they were called to be. Like they're just human. Their humanity is there to be not stifled, but to be uplifted. But that's not what's always happening in the lives of our Black and brown children. And as those of you who are familiar with me, with my work, I'm very passionate about the school to prison pipeline. I'm very passionate about how we eradicate that school to prison pipeline. I'm very passionate about the fact that it is our Black and brown children who are targeted, and I use that word on purpose, who are targeted to supply and feed that pipeline. it is no different than them being human chattel, because the chains that they wear are often unseen, but they are very much present. Chains of illiteracy, chains of parental incarceration, chains of poverty. And while that might not be everyone's story, we have no one single story. There is no one narrative. But as Meredith said so aptly, our lives being Black in America are predicated upon this double consciousness that Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois wrote so passionately about and so truly about. We live in a double consciousness. We have our pride and our love, but we are simultaneously traumatized. And the mass incarceration of this country has disproportionately impacted the lives of Black and Brown families. And so, with that being said, I would like to bring on our next guest and to delve a little bit more deeply into the National Parents Union's role, particularly as it relates to families dealing with parental incarceration. That is why I'm here. That is why you hear my husband John speak. That is why we partnered and are part and parcel of the National Parents Union, because there needs to be awareness. As we are reimagining the reopening of our schools, the conversations that were had prior to cannot be set aside only to address the very present issue of COVID-19 and the coronavirus pandemic. We must begin to see the intersection of all of these different issues and how they affect our children, our families, and what is being done, what is going to be done, what must be done to disrupt the status quo where mass incarceration is concerned. Without further ado, and on that note, please welcome Tanisha Gibbs. Welcome. Hi.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So Meredith actually introduced us. And so there's nothing like a personal recommendation, whether it's for a doctor, whether it's for a guest on the show, whatever it is. And Meredith spoke very highly of you. I'm sorry she couldn't stay for us all to engage in the conversation, but we know the work that she's doing and the importance of it. I'd like to talk to you tonight from the perspective of a parent, which you are. We both are parents. We both are Black women who are parents. If you could, please tell us about some of your experiences coming up that that really have made you into who you are. I haven't told our audience very much about you, but you are a very intriguing woman, I must say that to you. And I mean that with all sincerity, Tanisha. And your transparency in our conversation as we prepared for this show touched me very deeply. And so as much as you feel free to, I'd like for you to share that with our viewers this evening.
Okay. Well, again, I just want to say thank you to the National Parents Union, and thank you, Vivett, for reaching out and inviting me to speak on your platform. I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity. So yeah, about my upbringing, about the things that I've experienced and the things that have really shaped me in becoming the woman that I am. A lot of that comes from my parents, whom I loved very much. My mother, she actually died when I was 6 years old. So I have very like fond memories of her, because they're of course the memories of like my youngest times, my childhood. And then my father, who God rest his soul, he just recently passed away on July 1st. But our relationship it grew over time. I was close to him when I was a lot younger. And then, we had some time apart because my father was incarcerated for the majority of my life. Um, but then, once he came out of jail, we started building more relationship. And he attended a lot of my major milestones, if you will. So college graduation, he was there. When I got married, he was there. And with his own internal struggles with drug addiction, he actually ended up coming to live with me for a few years, like in his later part of his life. So the work that I do with students through my organization, I actually have a nonprofit consulting company called 144th and Vine LLC. And it was really birthed out of my experience as a child. When my mother passed away and I was 6 years old, my brother, he's 8 years older than me, he was 14 years old. And so when I talk to students and I go into schools and I'm speaking and I'm doing keynotes or anything of that nature, I always make sure that I share with them my story. And I do it in a storytelling fashion. I get their attention, but they don't know who the story is about, right? Because when I come in, I'm looking polished and everything, but they don't really know who, I really am. And that's how I went throughout life. When I was in college, I used to create stories about who my family was because I was ashamed of where I came from. And I feel like that is how I actually relate to a lot of the students because I went through some of the things that they're going through now. So just a little bit of a background. 144th and Vine, although we're a nonprofit consulting agency, we have a philanthropic twist. And so through our philanthropy, we really encourage and ensure that adjudicated youth and children with incarcerated parents or youth from challenging circumstances, that they receive the educational, social, and emotional support that they need in order to really, come into their full self, to really envision their full potential as well-rounded, members of our society. And I feel like that is really what my brother needed when his mother passed away. That was the woman who brought him into this world. That was the woman that he knew his caretaker was taken away from him. And to be honest, when my mother passed away, she was in a Middlesex County, jail when she passed away. So again, another layer of carceral trauma, like not being able to say really your goodbyes. The way that she died was so tragic, if you will. Like I wasn't there, of course, but I have her death certificate, and so she died from asphyxiation on her own vomit. So she was dealing with, kicking drugs herself, and threw up. And the people who ran the jail, they don't care. No, they don't care. Nobody came to check on her or anything like that. And so because of their negligence, we lost our parent. And that is so many, kids' stories who, we're seeing it right now. I know Meredith talked about everything that's happening right now in terms of like Black Lives Matter. One of the most recent stories about one of the youths who was incarcerated, and his name is escaping me right now, but he threw a sandwich on the floor. And they did the same exact thing that they did to George Floyd, and it killed him. And he's in a youth jail, he's 15 years old, and it killed him. So the work that I do is really, when I go out to speak, I'm letting these kids know it doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter what your background is. And I'm letting them know, this is where I come from. My family's from Newark. My father worked for the Newark faction of Frank Lucas. Like I attended Frank Lucas's wake. I have the obituary and everything. So I've known that life, my entire life, but I made choices for myself that was different. And so that's what I really speak to whenever I go out and I speak to students. I let them know you don't have to go down the road that your family has gone down, or your brothers and sisters might even go down. And I share with them about my brother's life too, because my brother is a success story to me. I'm so proud of him and like what he's been able to accomplish. Um, my brother, again, just like my father, was in jail, majority of my life. Well, federal prison majority of my life, and I visited him a few times while he was in prison. But the last bid that he did was 10 years long, and so when he came home, he had a plan, and he started his own landscaping business. He was a manager of 2 Dunkin' Donuts down the shore, where we're from. And, when the landscaping business wasn't really, popping off the way that he would have liked it to do, he pivoted. You know why? Because he's a hustler. And those same skills, and this is what I tell the kids, those same skills, if you apply them in a positive way, then they'll yield positive results for you. So nobody's saying that you can't be street smart. Just apply it in in a book smart fashion. And every time you see my brother now, he's in another country. Well, pre-COVID, but he's always on a vacation. He's putting money away for his children's college education. My nephew was accepted to Seton Hall. He ended up taking Monmouth University, which is another great school. But for me, I want him to be right around the corner from me at Seton Hall. My niece, she owns her own business. She actually is a licensed beautician, and she's doing wonderful. So, I share that with all of our students, and everyone that I come into contact with, because I want them to see, not just to hear somebody talking to you, right? Because our kids, they don't get that. They got to see that it's someone who was living a life, or someone who is from the same background as them, and they made something of themselves. They were able to, work hard and do what it was they wanted to do. And I'm that person, like I'm that example. So
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Credibility matters. Street
absolutely.
real thing. It's not enough to just talk the talk. They need to see you walk the walk, and then they'll know, I can trust you. I can believe in what you are saying to me. How was it for you and for your family during the times of incarceration? Because you mentioned your brother, who is a parent, and so whether he was a parent while he was incarcerated or coming home, that reentry process is a part of the post-incarceration. How did he navigate that, or better, how did you as a family member support that? Because I think there's not enough conversation around that, and so there are people who are parents, full-fledged parents, but who have this weight, if you will, if society allows it to be a weight. I think it is deemed as a weight once you have a record, a criminal record. It's very challenging. So how did he navigate that?
So when he first went away for the last bid, the 10-year bid, I was a sophomore in college. And so that hit me really hard, and it kind of flipped a switch in me, if you will, because my niece at the time, he only had one child at the time. And she was really young. She was probably about my age, about 5 or 6, when our mom passed away. And both of her parents were arrested in the raid. So down the shore in New Jersey had like one of the biggest raids. In fact, that morning, and this is part of the story when I go out and speak, I speak about how my sister, was arrested at 6 a.m. that morning. They kicked in my mother's door. The woman who took me in, who I call my mother, they kicked in our door on Myrtle Avenue in Neptune, New Jersey. And my whole thing was, I need to make sure like I hide the safe, because I knew where the safe was. So I'm like, I'm going to hide the safe. But they never came in the room where I was or where the safe was, thank God. But my niece, she had to still go to school, right? And so she's living with her grandmother now, who is on a fixed income, who's living in the not necessarily an old folks home, but where the type of apartments that, our senior citizens live in, but they live on their own, those types of places. So she's living there with her grandmother, and, she still needs school clothes and school supplies and all that. So I'm working my little job at the Limited, and I took my money, because that was supposed to be my money for school, because I'm working my way through college, essentially. But I took that money, and I took her school clothes shopping, and I stood in the gap, for my brother and for, her mother at that time, because they were both swept up in that raid. And then when he came home, you know, I wanted him to come stay with me. I had my own place. I had been talking to him while he was locked up and saying, I want you to come stay here. But he's a grown man, so he had already had his situation lined up with another the mother of his son. So he was straight on that end. But in terms of his reentry, he had a plan. Like I said, he knew what he had to do. He knew he had to get a job. He came home first in the halfway home. And that was in Newark. So, I would see him there, and I would like pick him up sometimes and take him down the shore, because I was up here. When he was in federal prison, I took my niece up to see him. We only went up 2 times. I personally don't like that experience, to be honest. So it's just something that I wasn't able to do, just because it reminded me so much of like my childhood. So I honestly, I do feel bad that I did not do more in that sense, because I was an adult and I could have done more. But it was something that I couldn't personally get past at that time. But yeah, his transition, I feel like it was more so a mental game for him, but he already, like I said, he had a plan. And so that's what I think made it work for him, because he knew that he was not going back, and that he was going to do whatever he had to do. My brother said if he had to work at McDonald's, he was going to work at McDonald's. Like, yeah, he just had a plan that he was not going back. He stacked his money up. He started his own business. Now he's looking into real estate, and everything that I've learned in terms of like real estate or investment trust, anything that I've learned, I've shared with him, and we've gone to see properties together. Like, we're on that whole, we're changing, our generational wealth. Like, our kids are not going to, have to go through what we went through. And I'm just so proud of him. I'm so proud of him and how he's been able to completely change his life.
I don't know him, but I am proud of him as well, because anyone who has been incarcerated who can come home and not only survive but thrive is a walking miracle. Because unless you have walked in their shoes, we will never know the traumas that they faced inside of that cell, inside of that belly of the beast, that hell. Mm-hmm. We watch things about prison on TV, those of us on the outside. Even going to visit a prison, as you mentioned, creates its own trauma. Not just, you had a trauma because it brought up prior trauma, but when I was going to visit my husband in prison, those times of visitation, I had to go through a lot of mess just to get to the one that I loved. And I haven't forgotten them. And every so often something will come up and I'll just start bawling, to really think about the way that it was just sheer evil.
And they make it so hard, don't they?
So hard for no reason. If, like, I couldn't wear this shirt, it's too low. So there were times I changed. I'll never forget the first time I went to visit him. They made me go back and change 5 times, Tanisha. And they knew I didn't know. It's like they saw fresh meat. They could tell. And instead of just saying, this is the dress code, which I did read the directive for the dress code, but I thought, I interpreted it fine. I wore something I wore to church. I thought I was good. It wasn't acceptable for them. 5 times back and forth, laughing, packages returned, a lot of things that you're like, you're making a hard situation worse for what seems like no reason, just to be mean. And
because they're not looking at them as humans. And that's the problem. It's like they've stripped away their humanity, and they're not looking at them as people, and they still are. Yes. Just because they, committed a crime, it doesn't mean they're any less human.
That's right. And somehow those of us who love them and support them on the outside must be punished for that as well. We're not here to make it easy for you. That was the resounding message that I received. So I can understand not wanting to go and visit and just having to have a measure of self-preservation. And I just applaud, and I hope your brother sees this one day and just like, shout out to you, Tanisha's brother. We love you. We have your back. We're very proud of you. Honestly, my husband and I, speak your truth. We're really, really super proud. And I'm grateful to you, Tanisha, for your transparency this evening, because you speak the story of many families, many stories that are untold, many that will never have the gumption or the wherewithal, the heart, or really the mind to even purpose themselves to speak up, because it just hurts so much. And because, you know, America loves to incarcerate people, but America doesn't like to do anything about helping to heal those people. America likes to put people in correctional facilities without any correction ever involved in their sentence. And so we have a system that is, I'm not going to say it's broken, because it's doing exactly what it was designed.
What it was meant.
So we need to change that frame of thought and really see what we're going to do to not only disrupt, but again, eradicate that system, because it is quite harmful. As an educator, I have mistakenly, by chance, come across several students who are dealing with parental incarceration or just familial incarceration. It doesn't always have to be a parent. It's someone that the child was close to, auntie, uncle, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, their whole communities. You're from Newark. I don't have to tell you.
And you know that wasn't by mistake or by chance. All of that was designed by God.
Okay. The whole communities that are like just ripped out, that are lacking male presence, that are just dealing with trauma after trauma after trauma. Many families, if they were not in poverty, can very easily plummet into poverty just because a family member is arrested and goes into prison. And those are not the stories that we see on TV when we, you know, watch what prison culture is about. And I'm hoping that on this platform and through brave souls like you coming on here and sharing your stories, we can start to see that families impacted by incarceration are really hurting, and it's people's lives. 10 years of incarceration, 10 years.
That was just one of his bids, though. So from 14 until the last time he got out, he had been in and out, in and out, in and out. He grew up in prison. He was in prison more than he was home as a teenager. And
at any point in time while he was incarcerated, did anyone address the fact that when he was 14 years old, his mother died in prison? Did anyone think that perhaps that needed to be addressed through therapy, through talking? Like
I doubt it. I highly doubt it. It was at this time. It's the 90s, you know, and like I was only 6 at the time, but just knowing what I know now, like from working in the education system and from you know, working with the Juvenile Justice Commission when I was in college, just knowing what I know now, I could tell you that they were not addressing that in the 90s. They were not.
No. And they're still not addressing the true trauma and really getting to the root of the matter.
We're just getting to trauma-informed care and ACEs and things like that. Like that's just now becoming, you know, a big thing.
Yes. So do you have any counsel that you would provide to families who are in some way, shape, or form coping with incarceration, whether it be a family member in jail or prison or coming home? Do you have perhaps some counsel?
I would say just be open and be patient with them. And something that, and this I'm going to speak from more so like from the drug addiction lens too. This is an epiphany that I had when my father passed away. And I think it's in line too with dealing with family members who were incarcerated or are incarcerated. We have to decolonize our mindsets, right? And so everything that we've been taught about people who break the law or go to jail or are defiant to police or authority or things like that, everything that we were taught growing up was that all of those things are wrong. And now we're seeing, you know, really how messed up the system was. Like as a kid, you didn't know, but like as an adult, oh, I can see like, yo, this is messed up. Like this person didn't, you know what I mean? And who's to say when my brother, you know, was arrested the first time that it was a lawful arrest? You know, I wasn't there. Who's to say? Who knows? So now my whole thing is for us not to look at people who, our family members who are incarcerated through a shameful lens, like not looking at them with shame, not being, you know, afraid to talk about it, not being afraid to, you know, share those stories, because our stories are powerful. Like Michelle Obama said, telling your story is the most powerful thing that you can do. And so just letting people know that it's okay for you to talk about it, and you really can't, you know, heal from anything that you don't address. So I think that really would be like my counsel. And also be there for them as much as you can be. And I know that can be really, really hard. It can be really, really taxing. You kind of spoke about how, you know, the money restraints, like how the bell system is set up, and then all the other things that take your money, like the calling and the emailing and how you set up those accounts, right? It's all predatory. They do it on purpose. Everything is predatory, even down to the commissary and things like that. And what they don't get, like when my father, his last time being arrested, you know, they call it the Green Monster down here in Newark, because the facility is that bad. They call it the Green Monster. But like basic necessities like warm pants and socks and a warm blanket, not like the light little blanket that they give you, even though the air condition is on blast, because they got to keep it cold because of germs. So like those basic necessities, if you don't have money in your commissary, like you're not going to get those basic things, and you're just going to be laying on, you know, your little mattress freezing basically. So, you know, just my advice would be there for, you know, that family member as much as you can. And I know that it's hard and it's easier said than done. But also just not stigmatizing them within their own family, because the world is going to do that enough. And so, you know, we shouldn't do that. And I'm saying that from a place of having done that. I lived through being ashamed of my past. I never would tell anybody. I made up stories when I was in college about my past. You know, made up stories about my family just because I didn't want to own it. I felt like, you know, I'm in college. I don't want the stink, you know, of the streets, you know, getting on me while I'm, you know, supposed to be out here being this college girl, if you will. And just not being ashamed. Just not being ashamed. That really would be my advice. Just not being ashamed.
And you speak, like everything you're saying is exactly why my husband and I started Speak Your Truth. I was ashamed, basically. I was very much in love, but very ashamed. And people could see the love on me, but I had no response when they said, like, Vivett, what's up with you? What's going on? Like, looking really happy. Like, you know, under normal circumstances, I would have very easily said, oh my God, I met this amazing guy and we're really vibing. And it wasn't like that. And I was like really floundering, like, well, what do I say when people ask me questions about my relationship? And I actually asked my husband that, which just imagine how insensitive that is, because I'm basically telling him, like, there's a part of me that's ashamed of you and I'm not telling anyone. And that shame came from not because there was anything wrong with him inherent as a person, the beautiful human being. But because my position, I'm an educator, I'm a, teacher,
Right.
blogger, activist, I have all these roles, and being married to someone who's incarcerated kind of doesn't fit with that. And so that's not something I really want to deal with. I want to push you to the side. But meanwhile, I'm like running up to the prison every week and like just dying to spend time with him, until he counseled me and said, you have to harness your truth and speak your truth, whatever that is. I can't tell you what that is. Yes, your life, you're living it. But I can tell you that until you get to the truth and you own it and you speak it, you're not really living an authentic life, Vivett, and you're robbing yourself of the opportunity to really live your truest life. And those words, like, they stuck with me, and I started speaking. And Tanisha, from that moment on, look where I am now. It helped to get me to this platform, and so many other doors open. And I cannot tell you how many people, students started coming to me. Other women started coming to me like, oh, my husband's locked up. I'm talking about in all walks of life.
Because you were obedient and you started walking in your purpose. You said yes. And when you say yes, whatever you believe, whatever higher power you believe, once you say yes, that thing will just give it to you. You'll just start manifesting everything that you're supposed to have.
Yes, help started coming, people started coming. So I say that to say, when I invite, and I'm speaking to viewers now, when I invite you to share, if incarceration has in some way impacted your life, and I invite you to share, I'm not telling you to do it naively. I'm not speaking to you, nor is Tanisha speaking to you from a place of, from an outward place. I'm speaking to you from a very personal place and sharing my own life story, that once I started seeking my truth, I know that lives began getting healed, starting first and foremost with my own. There's power in the truth, because shame is not anything that we are supposed to live in. We all make mistakes. And I feel like we tell this to children, but somehow we don't afford ourselves that same grace and that same kindness. We somehow feel like we have to get it perfect. Society may try to project whatever your loved one did onto you. Listen, that's not your cross. We all have our crosses to bear. And you should not be ashamed for loving somebody. That's not right. And I'm just so grateful to see. I'm hoping you're seeing two examples of Black women who are really doing our thing, who have been through traumas, who are telling you, 3 Black women. Meredith was here, Tanisha's here. I'm here to tell you, listen, it can be done. It is being done. And if you need help to do it, Tanisha, I'd like you to give us where can people find you? 144th and Vine. Tell us, if you have a few more minutes left in these wrap-up minutes, can you talk to us about that? We have a great delegate, Tafshir Cosby. She's from Newark.
I know her.
You know her?
I know Tafshir. In fact, her daughter worked for me when she was interning for a summer program. Yep.
Yeah, she's Newark, like hardcore. So when you say Newark, I'm like, oh, you got so she is about, oh, that's beautiful.
Yes, very beautiful, wonderful young lady.
Yeah, Tafshir is a wonderful woman. She's the minute we met, we just kicked it off, and she's ground. She's like, when I think of Tafshir, I think of solid.
Yes.
You know, she's
boots on the ground.
Yes, don't mess with her. That's my counsel. Tell us more about 144th and Vine and how people can get in contact with you.
Yes. So again, 144th and Vine, we're a nonprofit consulting agency. We work specifically with nonprofits that are working in the education sector. So after school programs, churches, summer camps, those types of programs, that's who we work with specifically. Also juvenile justice organizations as well. And 144th and Vine was actually birthed from the verse Psalms 144:12 from the Bible. It says, "Then our sons in their youth will be like well-nurtured plants, and our daughters will be like pillars carved to adorn a palace." And that was downloaded in my spirit about 7 years ago when me and my line sister actually co-founded 144th and Vine. One of our biggest clients right now is Rutgers, where we're doing some diversity, equity, and inclusion work. We founded me and the director of the Institute for Ethical Leadership. We actually founded or started, if you will. It's called the Nonprofit Professionals of Color Collective. And so, yeah, in that space, like we're creating brave space for Black and brown people of color, to really share their experience working in the nonprofit sector, because really what 144th and Vine believes in is that as long as we're building up the people that are working in the nonprofits, that they then can pour into the youth. Because if we're not supporting the staff, then you're constantly going to have that high turnover rate. You're constantly going to be bringing in new people. You're not going to be able to build relationships. And really, that's what it's all about, is being able to build those relationships with the youth and be there for them. So all of our efforts are mostly staff centric in terms of our consulting, if you will. And I curate experiences specifically for that population, bringing in guest speakers. We host monthly check-ins with a Black licensed social worker, whereas some of them might not even have an opportunity to receive the therapy. And that's actually the therapist who I love. She has a podcast. Her name is Joy Britt. She was just recently featured in Vogue magazine, but she has a podcast called The Joy of Social Work. And she talks about her grief and the things that she's been through. She lost both of her parents, and she was a school social worker. So she speaks from that lens too, and working with Black and brown students in the Bronx. But what else? What else makes us unique and special? Again, like I said, we have a philanthropic twist. So the Palms to Pillars program, really going in and speaking to youth. So that's like my motivational speaking side. That's like the events that I do, vision board events annually, as well as our annual give back events, either toy drives or raising money and other ways to give back. And that's really what we do. And you can follow us on Instagram at 144th and Vine. And you can also follow me at Tanisha Talks. I put it here where you see my face. And that's it. Or you can like us on Facebook as well.
And we'll be reaching back out to you as the National Parents Union continues to build and grow our network of organizations. Yours is definitely one I will bring to the larger table to talk more with and see how we can partner together to continue the work that we're doing, because I see that we're very much aligned, and you're about families, we're about families. And I thank you. Thank you for sharing tonight. It's such an honor. Thank you so much. And thank you all for watching and being here. This is Speak Your Truth, presented by the National Parents Union with yours truly, Vivett Dukes. Have a wonderful rest of the evening, and we'll see you again next time. Good night.
Good night.